Now, some of the things that Arnold is doing that Hardware 2.0 is not is we are able to see reflections and we are able to see light bouncing from one object to another. Now, this may not be completely evident yet, so let's go ahead and add some materials to some of these objects. Let's start with our sphere, and I'm going to go ahead and stop this real-time render just so I can work a little more quickly. So, with our sphere, I'm going to assign a new material. As I said earlier, the Maya materials such as Blinn and Lambert will render in Arnold. They're just not going to look as good and they don't have as many options. You'll notice all the way at the bottom of this list, Arnold has a list of its own shaders. All of the Arnold shaders are going to start with the letters AI. And the one we're going to use the most is the AI Standard Surface shader. So let's go ahead and click that to assign an AI Standard Surface shader to our sphere. Now, let's zoom in a little bit closer so we can see some of the features of this when we render. So the first thing you'll notice is that we're getting a lot of highlights in our render, right? This shape that we're seeing here is coming from one of our lights, and this shape is coming from another. If you look closely, you're also able to see reflections of other objects in our scene. I'm going to go ahead and stop this, and just for the sake of render speed, I'm going to go ahead and turn down my samples on both of my lights back to 1. And that way we can see the results of our renders a little faster. There we go. And so now it's rendering a little faster, and we're getting a render in about 8 seconds instead of 22. Now notice that if I move this object closer to my sphere, you'll see a couple of things. You'll see that our object is showing up in the reflection on this sphere. To make this more clear, let's assign a different material to our cylinder. So I'm going to assign a new material, and I'll go ahead and assign another AI Standard Surface. And under the AI Standard Surface material, I'm going to change its color to blue. So you'll notice a couple of things. Not only are we seeing our blue object in the reflection of the sphere, we're also seeing some blue bounce light on the ground. So what Maya is doing is it's sending out little virtual packets of light, and those lights are striking objects and bouncing off and hitting other objects. And that's why we're able to see some of the color from one object bouncing onto other objects. This is how light really works, but in order to calculate that, it takes a longer render time. The materials are also a little more powerful inside of Arnold. So rather than just having a specular fall off and eccentricity, we're going to have a lot of different controls over these materials. You'll notice that we have specular here, and I can change the roughness of the specular weight to make it feel more like a diffused object, or I can take my roughness all the way down to make it seem super shiny like a glass ball. IOR is the index of refraction, and if I turn that up, we're going to start to see a lot more reflection in our object. And if I turn that down, we will get a completely different type of reflection. You'll also notice that the material has options such as metalness. And by turning this up, I can make something seem a little more like metal or a little less like metal. And that's just in these first two tabs, the base color and the specular color. There are a lot of other tabs that will allow us to do other things inside of Maya, such as transmission, which will allow light to transmit through the object so we can make something that seems like a piece of glass. To activate each of these channels, we just have to turn the weight up and down. when the weight is all the way down, you'll see there's no more transmission in the rendering. We have a couple of other options in here, such as subsurface scattering. Subsurface scattering is what you see in your skin when you hold your hand up to the light. So your skin is not transparent, but light is definitely absorbing into your skin and passing through. So when we turn up our subsurface scattering, you'll start to see that our object starts to feel like it's absorbing some light, and that light is coming back out. Now it's looking a little grainy, and that's because we need to raise some of the other render settings. But let's imagine that this object was filled with something kind of pink. So if I change my subsurface color to this pink color, you'll see that it feels like inside of the object is pink. And again, I can turn the weight up and down on this. Finally, we have a couple of other options down here, such as sheen and emission. Let's try emission. Emission is going to make our object seem like it is emitting light. So if I turn this up, the object's going to seem to kind of glow. You'll even see that it's casting light on the ground. I can change the color of the light that's being cast to blue, and you'll see that our object is still white. It's just kind of glowing blue. So again, there's a lot of features inside of Arnold that makes it a very powerful render engine. That doesn't necessarily mean it's always the best choice, because it's taking 11 seconds to render this image, and this image isn't even high definition. This isn't even 1080p. So you have to make some creative decisions, because 11 seconds isn't that long to wait. But if you have 200 frames in your animation, that's 200 times 11 to get the entire animated sequence. So a lot of people underestimate render time, and I would say just be cautious about that and make wise decisions about which engines you want to use. I will also point out, just as a reminder, that all of the things that were available to us in the other shaders are available here as well. If I would like to assign a new material to our floor, and I choose the AI standard surface material, I can always still map in that same image that we had earlier to my color channel. I can go to File, and under File, I can choose my tile texture, and you'll see I'm getting a very glossy reflective tile on the ground now.